My name is Gennadi Malaschonok. I'm a professor of mathematics in Kiev, Ukraine. I got my PhD from Kiev State University and then my doctoral dissertation from Lomonosov Moscow State University. But in 2016, I came back to Kiev because after the annexation of Crimea and the First Russian-Ukrainian War in 2014, I could not bear to stay in Russia any longer, to continue sharing with the Russian regime the guilt and the embarrassment for what happened in the Crimea, in the eastern Ukraine, and the occupied territories. Today I'm heading the Institute for Computer Algebra of the Department of Mathematics at the Kievsko-Mogilansky Academy. My appeal is not just to the Russian mathematicians, quite a lot of them knew me, but to all Russian people. What is happening today is the second very tragic war between Russia and Ukraine. What is it comparable to? Nothing less but the Second World War. Why? On the second day of the current war, Russian military losses reached 3.5 thousand people. How does it compare to the Second World War? Well, Wikipedia says that the Soviet Union's losses throughout the full duration of the Second World War were around 6 million. If we assume that the total losses to date from both the Ukrainian and the Russian sides are 3.5 thousand times 2, assuming the same for Ukraine as we know for Russia, and extrapolate this to the same timeline as the Second World War, we get roughly 4.9 million, which is the same order of magnitude as the Second World War. How else can we compare the two wars? Leading to the Second World War, the German people were heavily brainwashed with a massive misinformation campaign. Then the Nazis then went on to capture Czechoslovakia and some parts of Poland with no reaction or help from France, the UK, the US or Russia. This lack of response mobilized the Nazis even further, and with the continued media pressure and brainwashing, the German people went to war against Poland in 1939, which led to the Second World War. Exactly the same thing happened in Russia this time. First, we had the war in Chechnya that has gone unpunished. Then the war in Georgia, where the West has not stood with Georgia or proclaimed Russia the aggressor. Why? On the one hand, well, we had a very well-executed media war with groups of journalists bending the truth and feeding the population with lies for almost a decade. It's been 8 years since 2014. This whole time we had slow yet efficient and targeted poisoning of the public consciousness in Russia. 9 days ago we saw the Cold War between Russia and the Ukraine transform into a hot war. This new war has the potential to lead to the next World War III, and we have some parts of the Russian population support it due to the continued targeted 8-year-long misinformation campaign in the country. I just heard another missile blowing up next to our house here in Kiev, and it happens every day, and we hear all of it. I have a news channel on Telegram. It's called No War in Ukraine 2022 with underscores between each word. I post the latest news about the current situation on there so that people have a direct line to a local source rather than the widespread misinformation about Russian advancements that dominates the state-owned media in Russia. I have reached out to a lot of my friends and colleagues in Russia only to realize that they're not yet ready to mobilize and stand and protest against the state. I'm very grateful to Anatoly Yoshik and Mikhail Gelfand, who stood up with Ukraine and in the first days of the war and made their position very clear. I'm grateful to them for immediately pushing to cancel the St. Petersburg Congress this year. But this is not enough. I would like to quote Alexei Navalny here. People of Russia, you have to take to the streets now, especially those in Moscow. Even if just 3% join protests, it will be 100,000 people. The war will stop the same day. I know you're afraid. I know you fear that you may be hurt. I myself went to every protest in the years that I lived in Moscow. When we buried Boris Nemtsov and then Valeria Novodvorskaya, both of them were murdered by the Russian state. And then to all the protest rallies that happened post the 2014 annexation of the Crimea. I know that the Russian police can be brutal, but layer up with protective gear and go. But if you don't take to the streets, if the scale of the protests doesn't reach at least 100,000, you will have to share the guilt for this war with the rest of the regime. 160 education institutions have been damaged across the Ukraine. It's now been 9 days of the war is the time of this recording. You yourself bear responsibility for this by remaining silent. Today was the day that brought an assault on the biggest nuclear station in the Ukraine. The fire went on for hours as they struggled to put it out. And what if that missile actually hit the target? It would have had another Chernobyl. Much closer to Russia too. Although it wouldn't actually be second Chernobyl, it would be much bigger and much worse because it's one of the largest stations in Europe. The sacrifice that you will make when you take to the streets today is incomparable to the tragedy that is unfolding before your very eyes and for which you are partially responsible. Everyone who has remained silent and has not gone to defend Ukraine in the protest rally is an accomplice. I have recorded this video with the equipment from the Kyiv-Mogilyansky University, and I hope to publish it on the front page of the Department of Mathematics website. So please share it with your friends and colleagues. Thank you.